You're such an asshole.
AssholeConsulting.com. How you kids doing? The old captain is not going to get a motorcycle ride in. He fired up the motorcycles, but there's too much damn work to do. Hey, Aaron, I would like to just know off the top of your head, living in the 1990s, compared to living now, in what ways do you think America has declined? In terms of technology and medicine, there have obviously been some major improvements, but here's what I think has declined in America. You can tell me if you agree. One, I think customer service has declined rapidly since the 1990s. I'm inclined to agree, but not significantly so. It really depends. I haven't noticed a huge decay, but there has been some. But a lot of that also has to do with, you do everything on the internet now. I remember when you had to sit and wait for fucking customer service and on a fucking line, hey, wait, will be 15 minutes. So you're kind of servicing yourself, but marginally I'll agree with you there. Two, I think there's a much, much higher percentage of lazy people and poor work ethic. And since the 90s, yes, that is true. You look at labor force participation rates, and again, until you millennials get your fucking act together, I cannot not point out just what a pathetic, sad waste of a crop of generation you guys are. There's no work ethic there. I thought it couldn't get worse than Gen X, and it did. It got a lot worse. Three, I think there's more incompetence in leadership positions. I don't know about that. I'm gonna address it on my notes and my list here that I'll get to later. Because the baby boomers were so fucking incompetent. The dot-com bubble, the housing crisis, that was all caused by baby boomers. Now, Gen X, I haven't worked a real job in about 6 years now. And when I did work a real job 6 years ago, I was under the command of baby boomers. I was like, just get the fuck out of here, you fucking incompetent old fucks, you fucking gray-haired puke fucks. So I've never been under command of a Gen Xer. And I can't testify as to whether or not Gen X is just going to repeat what the baby boomers did in terms of inept corporate management. I know if you look at Silicon Valley and those guys, it's worse in a mental illness sense, and that at least the baby boomers were just controlling, manipulative sadists. They got off on controlling and making their underlings' lives hell and lying to their employees. The Gen X, or contingent of Gen X managers and leaders and bosses, they got to do profits plus politics. They have to have social justice warrior, we're going green, corporate social responsibility. If you go back in the day, you'll notice we didn't have corporate responsibility. You just showed up for your fucking job and did your work, and then your boss lied to you. So I'd have to have you guys tell me, working under Gen X bosses, if they're just a bunch of incompetent dopes, which I'm going to predict they were, because I know my generation, and they're fucktards. They're incompetent. Maybe a different type of evil than the baby boomers. But I don't know if leadership is worse. Four, the media didn't seem to divide people as much as they did in the 90s. Oh, they did. No, the media did. The Star Tribune and oh God, don't even start. It's just that we have a completely new media called the internet, and it's just as divisive. But the baby boomers, we're all gonna be, what was the two guys that brought down Nixon? Every baby boomer was watching those guys and thinking that they were going to become those guys and bring down the president. Whether the president should have been brought down or not. That was the proto-crusaderisms. Those were the proto-SJWs, was baby boomer journalists. So they were there. 5, many of the suburbs were laid back in the 90s, and in the 90s are now full of traffic congestion, have seen major increases in crime and gang activity. I want to say that's the suburbs. The suburbs just moved out. Like in my day, Atham looked this up. There's the 494, 694 circuit. It's the bypass around the Twin Cities. Basically just makes a circle around the Twin Cities. And within that, you had your first ring suburbs of the Rosevilles, the St. Louis Parks, the Richfields, and all that. Well, then as population grows, they've decayed. They've gone from Republican to Democrat. And, crime goes up. Not horrendously so, but it's gone up. And then you have white flight outside of the 494, 694 circuits. And I got the exurbs, and even a third tier starting to form now. So there's Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Edina's within the unit there. Your Wayzata's, Maple Grove, Champlin, Anoka, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. It's outside the circuit, and so now that's where the housing prices went up. People who wanted good schools moved out there, and now some of those are the other thing is that as you expand in a circle, the amount of area expands by, if I do the math right, by pi, 3.14. In other words, exponentially. It doesn't expand linearly. So you get a lot of dilution the further out in concentric circles that you go. So now you have neighborhoods that are 50 miles outside of the metro. And yeah, they're nicer houses, they're nicer neighborhoods, but there's just not that many people and not that many people to commit crimes. Plus, to commit a crime, remember, criminals are lazy and they're dumb, all right? That's why they don't work hard. If you got an IQ above 90, you start to realize, well, this is stupid fighting with the law and getting in jail. I should go work something. I mean, you have to be pretty dumb to be a criminal. And you also have to be pretty lazy. And after a while, the gas money ain't worth your time and effort. You're going to, like, what? I'm going to go, you know, Hudson is technically a suburb. Hudson, Wisconsin is now a suburb of St. Paul. Well, do you want to drive the 40 frickin' miles to Hudson to go, you know, bump off a gas station? It's like, well, you got 1,000 options. And in other words, you're just driving way too far and it's way too much effort. So, yes, there's more congestion in the city because there's more people living there. But it isn't that the suburbs are ruined now. Well, no, the inner ring suburbs are, or lesser than they were. But then the outer ring suburbs, plus with self-employment or employment online and working from home, you got a lot of remote communities and people not taking the bus or the train. So the dynamic of white flight, the suburbs, well, now it's getting so far away that traditional relationships, they move 5 miles over. That's 5, not 50. So these communities, you can't even call them exurbs. These communities, satellite communities, are starting to form where it's kind of 1950s-esque. And it's kind of boring, actually. There's not a lot going on, and they're kind of milky toast type of people. And it's too far for them to go into the city to get any kind of culture either. So it's, like Lakeville. Oh my God, put a bullet in my fucking head. There's no way I could live in Lakeville. Even going north of my neighborhood, you know, Taylor's Falls, and there's a town called Wyoming, not the state, a city. I mean, now that's starting to build up, and like, what the fuck? No. At least the WBL has a little city to it, Matamita and all that. Now for tragic that crime and gang activity, no, not out there. There's no activity, good or bad. There's just nothing fucking going on. All these problems existed in the 1990s, don't get me wrong, but it has gotten much worse in my opinion. It's like America's Got Cancer, gets worse and worse, and with time, your thoughts. All right, so I agree with some of that stuff, and a few things disagree with, or you're slightly, I can't even say wrong on. You're not wrong. Probably is somewhere true in the United States. So let's talk about the 90s versus today. In terms of fashion, music, artistic culture, nothing has changed since the 90s. The music sounds the same. The fashion is the same. The hairstyles are the same. Everything's the same. Nothing has really changed. And again, T.J. Martinell maybe hit it on the head. He says, with the advent of the internet, there's a new tapioca pudding. Everything just gets thrown into a tapioca pudding. So nothing unique forms like mullets, banged hair, rolled up jeans, Nike high tops, grills. Nothing really. It's just like, that's on the internet, so we all see what everybody else is doing, and there's this conformity to the norm, this conformity to the mean. And so cars have not changed in style. They're all Ford Tauruses. They all are bubbles. They all look like jelly beans on wheels. The music all sounds like Maroon 5. I can't name one song by Maroon 5, but I guarantee all music sounds like it. Oh, Uptown Funk. Hey, the dude with the fucking thing from the Pacific Ocean Islander descendant. I don't care. Bruno Mars. That's the only guy I know, and that's the only song I can name because they fucking shoved it up our asses like for a solid week. But I don't even pay attention to music. I just listen to my old jazz. If I'm listening to music, it's old stuff because the new stuff has just been a blah for the past 20 years. Fashion hasn't changed. Sometimes women do the maxi dress. There's a fad there. Oh, they did the cold shoulder. I did a cold shoulder. But no, nothing's changed culturally, fashion-wise. But then there are some definite changes that has changed. And in general, I will say the 90s were better. I'm going to go into some general things, but I'm going to point out four main differences, both good and bad, of the difference between the 90s and today's. But by far, the 90s were better. First, we had higher economic growth. This paltry bullshit where we just go and have orgasms over 2% real GDP growth is sad and pathetic. I remember in the 80s, we had, I think, like 6.5% one quarter. The 90s had the booming dot-com mania. Now, admittedly, that was artificial growth and fake, or not fake, but unsustainable. But you were happy with 4%. 4%, oh, good, the economy's chumming along. Unemployment under 5%. Labor force participation rate, sometimes, in the upper 70s in the 80s. So it was still like, yeah, the economy was healthier. The economy was growing more. Our debt to GDP, that was a huge one. Under Clinton, now admittedly, you had a Republican Congress that really, under Newt Gingrich, made sure we didn't have what would have been called Clinton care, but now it's Obamacare because the Republicans lost their dick. But Clinton and Hillary in particular want to have Hillary care. That didn't go through. So by effectiveness, Bill Clinton is a goddamn fatty. Bill Clinton is to the right. His administration was to the right of Donald Trump. So Bill Clinton was, by all standards, effectively, even though maybe not ideologically, a very conservative Democrat president. He oversaw a very booming economy. Again, some of it due to the temporary and unsustainable dot-com boom. But he definitely was a very conservative president. Bush Sr. Continued on Reaganomics. So we had, generally speaking, lower taxes, but you want to talk about that. But anyway, the debt was 40% GDP. I think it even got down to 38% GDP. And now, under a genuine socialist, and now continuing on with Trump, and let's not forget George Bush Jr., those guys just ratcheted up that debt to now it's like 105% GDP. Now I get to worry about the financial solvency of the United States of America. But thank God we got the world's reserve currency. And the rest of the world is our bitch, but that's a different thing. Tuition was way cheaper. Back then, you could pay your way through college barely, but you could do it. I think I paid $3,600 a semester. You could afford it. You could afford it. There was not quite. It was the beginning of the tuition or the education bubble. I would even say there was an education bubble because the prospects, what we were promised, did not materialize after we went to college. We were probably the first generation, Gen X was in the 90s, to realize there was an education bubble. Now it's just you guys are paying 3 times the amount for an equivalently even more worthless degree. And then I will admit the opposite sex was more attractive. We were starting, again, you're going to see a lot of things where the seeds were sown and even some saplings were starting to grow. Like the social justice warriors, the radical leftist politics, the fat acceptance and all that. These were not prominent, but the seeds were planted and growing back in Gen X. But still, obesity was nowhere near what it was today. You could still see a relatively thin, attractive girl on campus. There were many of them. You had some, but they were the freaks where they shave their head and dye it purple. And we didn't have ear gauges. The tongue piercings and nose piercings, that was starting then, but we didn't have the ear gauges. There was the proto-soy boys starting out. I certainly was one of them. This is where your single moms told you, girls just like a nice caring guy. So you had a bunch of guys believing that, but then there were still masculine boys. There were still good-looking girls. Obesity was not we didn't have neats. We worked. So there was like this base level of adulthood and maturity that was there. And this bullshit of staying on your parents' insurance till 26, that wasn't a thing. Of course, insurance was a lot cheaper back then. But you guys, Obamacare, yay! So it was better, but you could already see the seeds being sowed for the destruction of the United States and the crap you guys got now 20 years later. So now let's talk about the 4 main differences, because now 20 years has passed since the 90s. We could talk about that. All right, so first, the left was nowhere near as insane back in the 90s as they are today. Like I said, Clinton by today's standards is a fascist pig and to the right of Donald Trump. And we didn't have social justice warriors, but they did exist on campus. Like they're and they were rejects. They were like you won't necessarily mock them, but you're like, get out of here. You know, like, okay, whatever. You're just your standard typical radical leftists, and that's why people realized they were radical. But they started the career or profession where you could live in academia for your entire life, and it's no shock today that Gen X now, if you look at your Gen X professors, they're the most radical, and they are the cause. You want to blame a generation for the social justice wars, blame Gen X. Because now they're they used to be the students, now they're the professors. We also see this in, back in I remember when they were trying to push this diversity thing. I'm like, no one's going to fall for this. Nah, apparently they did, because now not only do you have Gen X professors propagandizing it every day, and school teachers K through 12, oh, you have privilege. The concept of diversity and privilege, it didn't even exist, and it certainly was not in corporations. There was no such thing as a corporate social responsibility department. Corporations, even though under baby boomer leadership, they were there to make money. They weren't there to screw over the environment either, but that was their thing. And now that you have my generation in their 40s taking over, it is so funny how they claim to be so independent-minded and just like programmed sheep. They're instituting CSR, HR, diversity, privilege, all this fucking crap that has nothing to do with running and maintaining a business and employing people and getting a good product to the people and making a profit for your shareholders. Global warming was certainly starting, but the predecessor to that was we're cutting down the forests, even though they never told you the paper companies would not even bother tearing down virgin forests because it wasn't profitable. They'd plant their own forests and trees because that was most efficient. And the ozone layer and Captain Planet, again, the seeds being sowed, now it's global warming. You could go to college and you could disagree with your professor, and also your students, there was a respect, a civility, a maturity that you would not interrupt your professor, even if you disagreed with them. But you had to, let's put it this way, even in the 90s, you still had to be somewhat smart to get into college. Now you just need a pulse and they'll throw money at you and you're smart, I got a master's degree in poetic justice. So there was a little bit more, like college even still, it still meant you were a little bit smarter than average if you went off to college. Certainly there was no fake rape accusations. Feminism was there and it was established. It was definitely anti-male, but it was nowhere near the level of insanity where it's like, and they had 1 in 2 women are raped every 33 seconds, sometimes 3 times a day. That was the standard thing, but it was not a universal cacophony. People would just say, yeah, they're feminists, you can get rid of them. And consequently, you could also approach girls. Well, you had to because there was no interwebs. And there was not this fear, like when you went on a date. It wasn't until I got older that I start like, ooh, maybe I ought to call the cops. Ooh, she's Miss Dead Psycho Bunnies. Something's wrong there. But the larger point is that the left would be basically, we want more taxes for the poor people. The Democrats still certainly had their machine, and certainly they had, but there was no such thing as privilege. There was no such thing as this cardinal sin of being white or male. There was certainly, again, the seeds being sown for the pre-establishment of hating males and hating whites. But it was not turned up to 11 like it is now. So there was still room for disagreement. The left was nowhere near. I mean, you still had kind of union Democrats who were the leftists, not these rank and file fucking ideological protester professional activist types. And Obama is the perfect poster child for it. He was the first did jack fuck all shit president with his life. I mean, just nothing. Just a pure activist. And I think that was the epitome of like the switch, where it's like, we're going to go with this veritable social justice warrior, this do-nothing, pathetic loser. And that was the switch. So what was it? He came in 2008. I think that would be the delineation mark. But yeah, you could have, and another thing is I had leftist friends or Democrat friends because they were civil and cordial and they were smart. They just, and they wouldn't yell at you. It didn't define them. Politics was not a religion of the people. It was just, what are you political? And I like to help the poor people. All right. We could disagree on how effective that might be. Now it is a religion. for people who really have nothing else going on. I mean, it is the religion of the parasites. It is the religion of the evil, because they just have no desire to work or produce their own food. So that was one key difference. Two, we didn't have social media, and obviously there's huge ramifications of that. You had to go to bars, you had to go to nightclubs, you had to approach girls in public. I think that built up courage. I think that made you a man. Girls would, they still would flake out at about a 70% rate. I think the feminism and the standard, hypocrisy that you run into, that's always kind of been there. But you did have to go out. Girls would still dress up. I do remember that. Girls would make themselves look pretty. I remember even taking a couple girls to, say, the Symphony or a nice place to eat, and they would be thankful. Those that did show up, those that did show up. Towards my mid to late 20s, things started getting a little weird. And not that it was that good. I remember, in college, definitely getting stood up all the time. We had answering machines. You didn't remember the answering machines. So you definitely got galvanized real quickly there. But now with that social media, it's like, hey, I'm dating on the internet, and you've never even met these people, and you're exchanging nudie pics, but if you're ever to meet the girl in the real world, she won't talk to you. I mean, it's a different game, different ball game. But you had to go out there and do battle. Dating wasn't a video game. It was real life. It was real life. You were in the trenches. You had to go up to a girl and ask her out. You had to get her phone number. You had to call her. You'd have to wonder, is my answering machine broken? All that other shit. And then also with social media it wasn't just dating. You had to go and meet people in the real world. So there was none of this bullshit where, I got ADHD and social anxiety and the Asperger's and the autism. It's like, no. You're a fucking pussy who stays at home and can't fucking unplug from your goddamn phone. Go out and play some sports. Go out and play some volleyball. Go out and meet people in the real world. And that was, dude, after work and school, you couldn't wait to get, it was just like school. Like, you couldn't wait for fucking school then so you could go out and play with your buddies. And I remember weekends, if I had 3-4 hours, me and my buddies, we'd be tearing up, going biking, saying hi to girls over at the campuses of different colleges. And there was a passion for life and the need to get outside that simply just does not seem to be there anymore, because I guess all your attention in your life is on a little fucking digital doodad. So and you could see it now physically, not to brag, but the last generation of masculine men is Gen X. Baby boomers, certainly there were some masculine men there, but they're old now. But you look at these, and there are masculine millennials, no doubt about it. I'm saying generally speaking. You look at these guys and their testosterone, what was it, the Try guys, the guys over at BuzzFeed. Jesus fucking Christ, the men were more manly and masculine. There were some guys there, and then the women were a little bit more feminine, a little bit. And now, I saw a guy running around the lake the other day. I think it was, I don't know, that was the thing. I couldn't tell if it was a guy or a girl. I'm like, what the fuck? Gee, and that was the other thing. We didn't have this 41 flavors of gender. You had straight, gay, and bi. That was it. And everybody was kind of kosher with that. Everybody was like, yeah, and we were all okay with it too. Like, oh, he's bi, oh, she's gay, or whatever. All right, that's cool. We didn't sit there and fucking, I'm a sapiosexual, I'm asexual. We didn't do that fucking shit. It's like, oh, you like dick? Cool. Should we all go biking then? Oh, you like clams? All right, hey, you want to play basketball? Let's go. We didn't like, oh, so you're a trigender Zigglethorpe sapiosexual. They were like, oh, what does that mean? Like, fuck, I don't have time for that fucking shit. It's sunny out. Let's go play. You like riding motorcycles? Let's go. So there was probably, I'd say, and I'd even say not only different sexual preferences, also the races were a little bit more cool with each other. There was none of this. The Democrats had yet to really turn it up, especially with Obama, about we're post-racial, I hate fucking whitey and privilege, all that. It was just, hey, what's going on, Mike? Mike was a black buddy of mine. Let's go. Okay, here we go. You were just kind of like, yeah, we're friends. Let's go do something. the let's put it this way: the '90s was probably the last bit of time in American history where you did not place value on traits you were born with. That was where it depended on your character, your personality, your work ethic, your honor, like you as a human being. That's what it. And it wasn't like you got bonus points for having black skin or being, non-binary. And I identify. Fuck you. There was none of that shit. Maybe within leftist circles, in the insane asylum over in the liberal arts campus, but it didn't happen there. In any case, the social media, that there was none. Everything was analog, and you had to do it up close and personal, and that built character. And now we got fucking plants. We have fucking plants. Literal plants planted in the ground watching the thing. 3, sovereignty of the United States was not under assault. And back then you could think, the United States will continue on forever. And this is where diversity also took over. It's like, oh no, let's import a bunch of illegal aliens from Mexico, a bunch of people from the Middle East, and fuck whether or not they actually decide to honor and assimilate into American culture. It was a conscious and purposed effort on the left to get more votes. I think it's also a conscious and purpose effort where they hate males and they hate whites. There was no, again, getting back to traits versus accomplishments, diversity had no value. They're trying to get diversity, and now, oh my God, corporations and Gen X leaders just cannot suck the dick of diversity enough. I mean, look at Starbucks. Holy shit. I mean, they just rolled over on their back. There was no privilege or groupthink or anything like that. It was like, no, we're still Americans. America's good and all that. And now you get to look at it now. People, like in the 90s, in 1994, I didn't think I'm going to move out of the United States. By 1997, 98, I was like, I see some writing on the wall maybe. And now definitely it's like, I want to buy property in another country just as a good solid plan B. In general, both men and women were pro-United States. Now, especially the women are, refugees welcome, male privilege, fuck the patriarchy, United States is evil, our founding fathers were slaves, all this other stuff. They've thrown out U.S. sovereignty, and they want to make the United States kind of like an international port of call for everybody to come here and live off of taxpayer money that they don't work up. And so there was like, Team America, now and not so much. It's very much the left, K through college, has done an amazing job brainwashing both men and women, but particularly women, to hate their country and to hate their fellow countrymen. So that was not as pronounced in the 90s. And then finally, corporations back then, I alluded to it before, corporations just produced their fucking shit and sold it to you. They didn't give you a side of leftist politics or sermon with it. Like Target, their bitch of an corporate social responsibility, this pro-diversity, blah, blah, blah. The one that says, we're going to step forward and we're going to have non-gender, transgender, the bathroom bullshit. Do you remember that crap? Transgender people and non-conforming, non-binary, everybody's doing just fine. All of a sudden, Target's got to come on there and stick their dick in the mashed potatoes and say, look at what we're doing, plop. And it's like, hey, Target, how about you just sell me some fucking boxer shorts and a goddamn pair of shoes? Starbucks, same thing. Hey, let's have a conversation about race. Remember when they did that? There was let's have a conversation about race. It's like, hey, Starbucks, serve your fucking coffee. Exxon, they just, or not Exxon, British Petroleum. Hey, get me gas. Now British Petroleum's all green. Oh, look what we're doing for the environment. It's like, you're a fucking oil corporation, really? Exxon I picked on Rex Tillerson, former Secretary of State, was he? When he was head of ExxonMobil, it's like, why do you have a CSR department? You're not fooling anyone. You're not going to convince the leftists. So this constant pandering and mea culpa and protection money to the left, and look at corporate social responsibility, this, organic, there was not, it was starting, but there was not this organic, fair trade, free trade, all this other bullshit. It was like, hey, here's your pad of paper. Do you need paper for your printer? Here you go. Was it? And we're getting an organic. It's recycled, 10% recycling. You could just go buy shit and not be served. Hollywood politics is the exact same thing. You could watch Die Hard and not have some fucking goddamn leftist Gen X director shoved some fucking political agenda in. Now, there were certainly some political agendas but, movies, Back to the Future, no fucking politics. Goonies, no fucking politics. Batman, the first one, no politics. You could just go out and buy shit from corporations and they would just sell you the shit. You could go, I need some grapes. You go to the grocery store, get some grapes. It wasn't fun. We here over at Cub Foods want to let you know what we're doing there. When you go to a hotel, I don't know if you guys gone to a hotel much, but in the old days, you just go to a hotel and you could take a fucking shower and go to bed. No, it's like, for the green organic, please reuse your towel. We're trying to say, it's like, shut the fuck up. There was not a constant cacophony or symphony of leftist, environmental, feminist, diversity, racial politics shoved up your ass everywhere you went. You could just get a fucking gallon of gas and get yourself a fucking thing of toothpaste without some Gen X corporate muckety-muck fuck shoving in little fucking leftist politics in there. So it was nice. It was the days when corporations just sold you shit. That was it. But one thing that is better, and again, I'm going to need you guys to tell me if it's better or not, was that better today than it was in the 90s, I mean. I cannot emphasize how bad it was having baby boomers head up corporate America and heading up our institutions. The baby boomers were just the biggest lying, deceiving, misleading sacks of shit ever. From teachers lying to you all the way, and this happens today by Gen X people, teachers lying to you all the way through your professors, and when you apply for jobs, they would lie to you on job descriptions. I cannot think of a more evil or detestable. You wonder why I hate baby boomers so much, because I had to fucking suffer under them. They were a lying, inferior, throw the United States away generation. And now I look at them, the capacity I interact with most baby boomers today is in terms of retirement planning, and these hypocrites, these fucks, all the sermoning and lecturing they gave my generation. And now here they are, and they don't have any money. They're a bunch of hippies. They threw away the United States. We got a ton of fucking debt. I mean, finally Gen X is maybe taking over, but they've been so thoroughly indoctrinated, they're going to be just as bad as the baby boomers. It's like, what the fuck happened? You inherited the most powerful nation with surpluses and everything from the World War II generation. Now before you leave, you've managed to shit on it, burn it, rip it in its ass, and now here's this crumpled up piece of shit country left for you Gen Xers. Thank God we got that world reserve currency, eh? And then, again, hypocritically, you want to blame a generation for the financial crisis. Blame the baby boomers in the banking industry. Oh my God, those fucks. So your education bubbles, your housing bubble, the finances of the government, the slowing economic growth, the declining labor force participation rate, the declining... Dude, blame it on those fucking baby boomer cocksucking motherfuckers. And I saw where... And then what was probably the worst is you didn't know what you were... Like, you have to defer to elders. You have to like, oh, we're doing it right? Oh, I'm doing it okay. And these guys would just get up in your shit about the pettiest of bullshit. They were genuine sociopaths. Genuine sociopaths. I'm hoping, I am praying to God, Gen X leaders in corporations. Now, I'm not talking the ones in Silicon Valleys where they can't just, you can't hear them because they got Karl Marx dick in their mouth the entire time. But I'm hoping that like your rank and file, middle managers, senior managers, maybe even young corporate executives who are Gen Xers are leading more honestly, more intellectually honestly, more intelligently, more sanely, more logically, and are not just sitting there like the baby boomer fucks. I don't know what drove the baby boomers to be such sadists that they were, but they were. And you baby boomers, don't even go to fucking listen to your kind. Fuck you. Fuck you. You don't even get to speak, as far as I'm concerned. I am hoping and praying to God that Gen X bosses are better than the baby boomers. But here's the problem. I grew up with my generation. I look at them like, yeah, you guys you're just a bunch of fucking sadist pieces of shit anyway. And if this constant jamming in politics with profits is any indication, they're just as easily programmable and brainwashable as the baby boomers were. And knowing my generation, they're a bunch of incompetent fucks. So I don't know. I can't say because I'm not on the trenches anymore working for some cocksucking piece of shit corporation. And maybe you guys could tell me down below if the Gen X is is competent or anything. I'd like to think it, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're just as bad as the baby boomers. But man, Gen X would really have to work hard at it to be as incompetent as the baby boomers when it comes to being bosses and managers. I think there's a little bit of hope that, you can do online education in the way that certification is going. There certainly are some Gen Xers who are trying to lead and get us out of it and like destroy big education. But based on what I see, I look at, especially the women, we got to be corporations and careers, careers. So it's like, did you not learn anything from the baby boomers? Did you not learn from divorce? Now everyone's getting divorced. I don't have that much hope that Gen X has been wised up. I think they're all going to be a bunch of Sheryl Sandbergs. They're all going to be a bunch of the former Yahoo gal, where it's just robots and automatons, and maybe that is even better than baby boomers. But man, it's real hard to beat the baby boomers in terms of being sucky leaders. So those are the four differences. So yeah, I'd overall say yes, the 90s were better. You didn't have this mental leftist insanity. You did not have the left pitting everybody against each other in terms of race, gender, and sexual orientation. Gen X, for all of its faults, was a more mature, productive generation than the millennials are today, and heaven help us with Gen Z. And then the absentee, the internet not being around, not being such a thing as social media, you had to meet in meet space. You actually had to be personal. You had to be like you were programmed to be for 2 million years of human evolution. And I know the internet is the new normal, but there was no even concept of the internet. Even when the internet was there, hey, email, I can send a text to my buddy. We didn't even have text. I'm going to email. Oh, that's cool. Hi, Bob. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing good too. I'm at the library at the university, typing like this. It's just kind of funny how Gen Z's never been without the internet, never been without their cell phones, and that is not how humans are programmed and raised and conditioned and have been evolutionized. So that has resulted in just some heavily dysfunctional people that are going against their nature. But this is why I wrote the book Enjoy the Decline, because we are not on an incline. We are not achieving and summiting new summits. We are going down. The hardcore economic data shows we're going down. The lack of testosterone, the lack of excellence in both men and women is going down. The way millennials and now Gen Z have sold themselves to corporations and big education just with no regard for their own personal desires and wishes is amazing to me. It's all going downhill. Thankfully, I'm dying in about 35 years, as long as you guys keep the lights on. Thank you very much. That's all I care about. But no, it's worse. It's significantly worse because at least in the olden days, you didn't worry about, is the country going to be invaded? Am I going to be shot? Is it going to be like South Africa where they just take my fucking land away? And there was still, although it got smited out of you real quick, I'd say about 25. There was maybe this maybe I'll meet a nice girl, man. No, and I'm sure you girls, it's the same thing for you. I'm just not a girl. Like, maybe I'll find a nice masculine man. No, it's not going to happen. So, all right, that's it. You guys got questions? Cappy's got answers. ASOconsulting.com. Check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Aaron Clary. You can donate money there if you want. I got to get on that. I got to throw something up there for reasons. I got my books over on Amazon.com. And then tune into the Clary podcast over on SoundCloud.com. See you guys later. Tools.